Okay, welcome to Thursday night Q&A. This is Gardening with William DeMille. This is where I help you have the best garden of your entire life. We discuss gardening, farming, livestock, the Georgic tradition, soil health, education, and the purpose of this is to help your health from the ground up to become better and better. We're all about growing food and turning deserts into grasslands and forests. The environmental movement is excited nowadays with all kinds of problems, pointing out problems in the world, and we are pointing out solutions. Whether those problems are relevant or not, it remains to be seen. In 100 years, let's talk and I'll let you know. But tonight we're going to talk about gardens. This is the Q&A, so ask your questions and we will answer them. Tonight I kind of wanted to give you a quick update of the last 2 weeks because we have not had our Q&As for the last 2 weeks because I was gone at Monticello College so that we could teach a seminar there on soil health and help people to grow food. We had about 40 participants who came, and it was a great 9 days that we spent talking about soil health, food production. We got into the microscope and showed people the functional groups of microbes in the soil. We had each family bring their own soil sample. We looked at their soils while we were in that seminar, so it was great to see. We had 1 day of permaculture and 1 day of biodynamics. We had a day on beekeeping, and we were hands-on and in the classroom, and we ate fun food. It was a good time. We got to know a lot of people, so that was good to meet new people. Let me think now. Questions. What questions do we have to answer tonight so that you can grow food? A question I keep getting over and over and over from hundreds of people over the years is they tell me that the tomatoes have blight. And then I say, describe how it looks. And they say, the tomato gets black on the bottom. First of all, that is not blight. If your tomato, the fruit itself, is turning black on the bottom, that is blossom end rot. That is a calcium deficiency because your tomato is not taking up enough calcium. And there can be different reasons for this. Inconsistent watering can be a problem. Not having enough calcium in the soil can be a problem. But usually the best thing you can do to fix the calcium deficiency is to save your eggshells. When you're eating eggs, you just save the eggshells, put them in a container, and you want them to dry out, because if they stay wet and moist, then they start to rot and it becomes a disgusting rotten egg smell in your house. So when you are saving your eggshells, make sure they are in an open, wide container so that they can dry out. Then at some point when you have a lot of eggshells, put them in a blender and blend them up into a powder. And then you can put about a tablespoon or two in the transplant hole when you plant your tomato plants. This keeps your tomatoes from getting blossom end rot. This works probably 99% of the time. Every person that I've told to do this, they have had success. At least I've never had anybody come back and say it didn't work. Everybody who has told me that they've done it, I've always come back and said that worked fantastic. I haven't had any of the tomatoes getting the black spots on them. So we've talked about that before in these classes quite a few times, but I'm just telling you again because in the last 3 weeks, I've had 4 or 5 people ask me that again. So this is a very common problem that has happened with people's tomatoes. But here we are in the middle of, well, I guess it's the beginning of July. I was going to say the middle of summer, but so tomatoes across North America are already pretty big in most people's gardens. So what do you do now? You can still take the crushed up eggshells and you can just sprinkle them on the ground around the stem of the tomato. You may want to scratch the surface a little bit, not too much, maybe an inch deep with a little trowel, and kind of work those eggshells down a little bit and then water it thoroughly. Those eggshells will dissolve down into the ground. The microbes will eat the eggshells and get them into your root system. So that would be something you would want to do immediately if you have not added calcium supplement to your soil. So blossom end rot is a big deal, a big problem, and an easy fix. All you have to do is add in the eggshells. Okay, so I wanted to tell you a little bit more about my book. My book is great. We ordered 30 copies of my book, and I'm down to 5 copies now. In fact, some of these are sold. So I have 4 copies left here. So we ordered some more today. So if you have not got my book yet, go to Amazon, look up Worry-Free Eating by William DeMille. I'm going to show you what it looks like. It's right here. And the camera is not going to show up very good but anyway, there it is. So this is what you're looking for. Worry-Free Eating by William DeMille. This book has a lot of experiences that I've talked about over the years, things that I've done, things I've learned in my garden. And in the last few years, with the recent education that I've had from the Soil Food Web School and from I'm working with all the different scientists around the world on all the webinars that I've attended over the last few years in the wintertime, I've brought it all together into one cohesive message about soil health and how to grow the best plants in the world. So this is in the book. Now, I couldn't put everything in the book because I didn't want to write a 1,000-page book. So I often talk about things that are not in the book, but the book is a foundational place to start, to understand that weeds are an ecological indicator of what our soils are doing. They are not spawn of Satan. Weeds are not bad. Weeds are the first responders that come into the system. They come into your ecological system to do an ecological job, and they will be covering the ground of bad ground that has been destroyed. So tillage is a relatively new thing as far as the earth goes. So when the earth gets disturbed, the weeds are the guys that sprout. So the more we till, the more we stimulate bacteria, and the bacteria will create lots of nitrate, and nitrate will wake up weed seeds and sprout them. So the more we till, the more we create the perfect system or the perfect conditions for weeds to grow. So I start out with foundational things like that in this book. And then the climax of the book is chapter 6, which has a chart in it. It's a forms comparison chart. So we are comparing the forms of the different aspects of our ecology. So what we're focused on with that forms chart is the water cycle, the mineral cycle, ecological succession, and energy flow cycle. And when we make management decisions on our farm, we want to make sure that our management decision is going to enhance all 4 of those ecological processes. Because if I'm going to do something that may help the water cycle, but it's going to hurt my ecological succession, I still don't do it. It has to enhance all 4 of the ecological processes. And once we begin to understand these things, at that point, we're going to begin to understand ecological literacy. And I think that is one of the biggest problems in the environmental movement today, is that we live in a world where humans are ecologically illiterate, yet humans are the keystone species to keep every other species healthy and alive. We are the ones with the power to make huge positive changes in our ecosystems and the overall environment. We can do that, but we can't do it if we are illiterate. So that's what my book is about. So get my book, study my book, and you will be on the road to growing food easier, growing food that is profitable, because we are lowering the input costs and we are working with nature to create the most beautiful, fascinating, awesome ecosystems out there. And that is my spiel for tonight. So we can open this up for Q&A. So if you have questions, go ahead and ask them right now. Vernie Lynn, do you have any questions you'd like to ask?
This might be too complex of a question. I was just making more of an observation than anything else.
Okay.
This year has been different for us here in Clover Valley, and I know you've discussed this, I think, on most of your Thursday evening classes. But what do people do who are dealing with a year that does not look like any other year they've had? How do you, as a farmer, make decisions to like adjust on the fly, essentially, for plans for your garden? What do you do to like, you might just have a crop failure one year, but what do you do when you can see you're not going to be able to use a certain piece of land, or maybe you're going to be planting late? I guess my question is, what is your decision-making process as a farmer that you go through to still get a harvest as much as possible?
Okay, so that is a pretty complicated question, and the simple answer is context. Okay, next question. Okay, that was a joke. Let me elaborate, because what you're saying, Vernie, is really important. We, in the last 30 years of farming, we have seen more changes in the climate. And so I mean, there's a lot of groups out there like Understanding Ag. They're talking about, how do we build resilience in our farm? What are we doing so that our plants can survive and be resilient? Because we are expecting more extreme weather. And we're providing food for hundreds of people as farmers. Some people are producing food for thousands of people on the big farms. And so there's a lot of humanity relying on the fact that we can grow a crop. And it is getting hard. So what do? We need to understand the way ecology works, because there are places in ecology, just out there in the environment, where we can find plants that are thriving, and they've been through all kinds of hardships. So we just went up into the forest today. We were doing ecological monitoring today with the Alan Savory Institute, and we went up there and we were doing our counts and looking at all the different species and everything. And there are plants up there that look absolutely, excuse me, they look absolutely beautiful for this time of year. And they're not late, they're not early, they're wonderful. Yet in my gardens, I'm struggling to have enough to get the growth that I want. And I'm trying to do everything I know how to do, but Mother Nature has already figured it out. So we want to figure it out. And the way that we do that is by mimicking nature. So the things that I do, the management decisions I do, like right now with a year that's different, I need to be making those management decisions 5 years ago. So there's not a lot I can do right now for this year, but I can do a lot in my crops that are coming up. So my 5-year plan, my 10-year plan, my 15-year plan, those are the most important things to be dealing with right now. So how do I do that? Well, we focus on building soil health. We focus on mimicking nature as much as possible. We focus on getting the all 4 of the ecological processes as healthy as possible within our own stewardship of the land that we're working on. We want to try to get it to rain more. Well, and most people think, oh, that's nutty, you can't make it rain. Yes, humans can make it rain, absolutely, by focusing on the water cycle and making that water cycle really, really healthy. And so, well, how do you do that? Well, if you manage 10,000 acres and you cover that land, so you have no bare soil at all, you cover all the land with green living plants. It could be, it could be hay, it could be pasture, meaning a grassland. It could be forests. It could be a combination of all those things, but the ground needs to be covered with living plants every day of the year. We never ever want to have bare ground. So if we're going to cut hay, we need to grow back the foliage as soon as possible. And if we're cutting hay, we need to cut it tall. Leave your hay mower should not be cutting it low to the ground. It should be cutting it high. No, not super high. I mean, you obviously want to be able to make good hay, but there are little tiny decisions like that we can be making that are management decisions that will help the entire ecosystem. So 10,000 acres is the minimum amount of land a person needs to be managing in order to, impact the water cycle at all. So, we're managing 20,000 acres here. Not me alone, but those of us who are here are our group. So we actually can have a very positive impact on the ecosystem that's here. So, context matters. If you're talking about your garden, it's a very different context than if you're managing thousands of acres. But there are things we can do that are true with any context, and that is understanding the four ecological processes. We have to become ecologically literate. Ecological literacy is the key to to be able to do all of these things that I'm talking about. Because if we don't know what to do, then we're going to be making the wrong management decisions. Just think of an example for a minute. Think about the idea that human hygiene can drastically increase human health. And it does, we know that. And so by taking frequent baths, frequent showers, washing hands, that type of thing increases human health a lot. But we have to know that. If you don't know that washing your hands is important, then we start spreading germs and people are getting sick. And it's the very same simplicity of that with the whole understanding of ecology. Because when we understand ecology, then we know what to do in order to make the ecosystem healthy. And just remember, we're focusing on those four ecological processes of keeping them healthy. We can create an ecological succession with a community of plants that create a beautiful, ecosystem so that the plants we want to grow will thrive. And we can create a water cycle that's working good. That it usually takes, a community. You need to have, an entire region that's keeping the ground covered so that you have low pressures. That encourages rain condensation and the more frequent rains. It holds more moisture in the ground than bare earth. So that water cycle working. So these are things to be thinking about, But it doesn't matter if you have a very tiny garden or thousands of acres, the principles are the same. Now, what you're going to do about it can be very different, but the principles are the same. So start by understanding ecological literacy. That was a great question, Vernon. I'm glad you brought that up. Let's go to another question. Forrest, Amber, Kim, just go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question if you want.
Okay, so I have a baby that's not happy because she wants to be picking green tomatoes. So I'm going to put her on the other side of the fence for a sec. But let's see here. So what do you recommend for, how do I switch this? Like squash bugs. So I've got like diatomaceous earth, but I haven't put it on it yet. But I just came out here and noticed that the squash bugs are about to destroy the zucchini.
Yeah. So there's one great thing you can do with squash bugs, and it's not easy. Get a jar of water.
Okay.
Okay, and get on your hands and knees and grab all those bugs and stick them in the jar of water. The reason you're putting them in the jar of water is because if they're just in an empty jar, then they will just crawl out as fast as you're putting them in. But if you put them in the water, then they are swimming around, and then they can't crawl out of the jar very good.
Okay.
You want to watch your squash plants in the early season before they multiply, because if they lay eggs and then the eggs hatch, you're going to have a bazillion squash bugs and you can't get them. So if you're looking at your squash bugs every day, as soon as you see 2 or 3, you want to get them off and pick them off. That is the best thing to control the squash bugs. Now, if your neighbor's hatched and there's a bazillion and they're all flying around, kind of a problem. And I'm sorry that I don't have a better answer. But I have controlled squash bugs before by just picking them off as you see them.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate it because there's last year they were completely out of control and we tried the diatomaceous. Yeah, see there's a whole bunch of them right down there. So
yeah.
Okay.
So
thank you.
Are they little tiny ones that have already hatched?
No, they're big ones.
Yeah. Yeah, I would just get a pillow, like an old pillow that you can get dirty and not worry about. Put it on the ground, kneel down on it so you're not getting fatigued with your knees hurting. And kneel over that plant and pick off all those squash bugs. And while you're at it kneeling down, you could spend the time praying to kill 2 birds with 1 stone.
Right. Woo! There's one right there. Okay. Yeah, they're the big ones, but it looks like they're about to make a bunch of eggs. So
yeah, I'd get those picked off quick. And then you can actually see their eggs on the underside of the leaves. Look at the underside of every single leaf. It might seem a lot, but that plant probably only has 15 to 20 leaves on it. So it's not that big a job. Look underneath, and if you see the little yellow eggs that are stuck there, just squish with your thumb.
Okay.
So yeah, that's the best thing to do.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Okay, does anybody else have any questions tonight?
Hey, William, this is Forrest.
Hey, Forrest, how you doing?
Good. Hey, I wrote down last week, you mentioned 2 types of worms, red wigglers or European night crawlers. I was going to get some. I didn't know which one would work better we're over here in Vernal.
Yeah, so either one will work great for composting.
Okay.
Yeah, they're both great composting varieties. So whatever you can find. Usually the European night crawlers are more expensive because there's not as many. There's just not as many people raising those.
Okay.
And they're a larger worm. If you're wanting to have dual purpose, like to harvest the worms and go fishing, you probably want the Europeans. The red worms are pretty tiny. I mean, they're not tiny, but they're not like a great big nice fishing worm.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah. All right. Any more questions tonight? We haven't heard from Kim, but maybe she doesn't have a question, and that's fine. All right. So there are some thoughts about ecology, and hopefully me answering your questions tonight was helpful. We are going to wrap this up, and you guys have a fantastic week, and we will be back next week, same time, same place, to help you grow the most fantastic garden of your lives. Good night.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
Thanks, William.
You're welcome.